The story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal. 1 Kings chapter 17:1-9 Introduction. The story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal is a dramatic account of faith, courage, and the power of the one true God. It takes place during a time of great spiritual crisis in Israel, under the rule of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, who led the nation into idolatry and the worship of Baal. Elijah's bold declaration. 1 Kings chapter 17 verse 1. And Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, As the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. Elijah, a prophet of the Lord, boldly confronted King Ahab, declaring a drought as judgment for Israel's idolatry. This drought lasted 3.5 years, causing severe famine throughout the land. God's provision for Elijah. 1 Kings chapter 17 verse 6. And the ravens brought him bread and flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening. And he drank of the brook. During the drought, God miraculously provided for Elijah. First, by sending ravens to bring him food while he hid by the brook Cherith, and later through a widow in Zarephath whose supply of flour and oil never ran dry. 1 Kings chapter 17 verse 14-16. The challenge on Mount Carmel. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 19-21. Now therefore send, and gather to me all Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which eat at Jezebel's table. And Elijah came unto all the people, and said, How long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him, but if Baal, then follow him. After the years of drought, Elijah challenged Ahab and the prophets of Baal to a contest on Mount Carmel. The purpose was to demonstrate who the true God was. Elijah stood alone against 450 prophets of Baal. The test of fire. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 23-24. Let them therefore give us 2 bullocks. And let them choose 1 bullock for themselves, and cut it in pieces, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under. And I will dress the other bullock, and lay it on wood, and put no fire under. And call ye on the name of your gods, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God that answereth by fire, let him be God. The prophets of Baal called upon their God from morning until noon, shouting and even cutting themselves. But there was no response. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 26-29. Elijah's prayer and God's answer. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 36-38. And it came to pass at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, that Elijah the prophet came near, and said, Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Israel, let it be known this day that thou art God in Israel. Hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that thou art the Lord God, and that thou hast turned their heart back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell, and consumed the burnt sacrifice, and the wood, and the stones, and the dust, and licked up the water that was in the trench. Elijah rebuilt the altar of the Lord, drenched it with water to remove any doubt, and prayed a simple yet powerful prayer. God responded immediately with fire from heaven, consuming the offering, the wood, the stones, and even the water. The people's response and the prophet's fate. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 39-40. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces, and they said, The Lord, he is the God. The Lord, he is the God. And Elijah said unto them, Take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them. And Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon, and slew them there. The people of Israel, witnessing the undeniable power of God, fell on their faces in worship. Elijah ordered the execution of the false prophets to purge Israel of idolatry. Elijah's prayer for rain. 1 Kings chapter 18 verse 42-45. And Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he cast himself down upon the earth, and put his face between his knees. And it came to pass at the 7th time, that he said, Behold, there ariseth a little cloud out of the sea, like a man's hand. And it came to pass in the meanwhile, that the heaven was black with clouds and wind, and there was a great rain. After the victory, Elijah prayed earnestly for rain. His persistent prayer was answered, and the drought ended with a torrential downpour. Elijah's despair and God's gentle whisper. 1 Kings chapter 19 verse 11-12. And he said, Go forth, and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And, behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire a still small voice. Despite his triumph, Elijah fled in fear from Jezebel's threats. In his despair, God revealed himself not through dramatic displays, but in a gentle whisper, reminding Elijah of his constant presence and the 7,000 in Israel who had not bowed to Baal. Reflection. Elijah's story teaches us about the power of faith, the courage to stand alone for truth, and the importance of listening for God's voice, not always in the dramatic, but often in the stillness. It reminds us that even great heroes of faith can experience fear and doubt, yet God remains faithful.